Good evening, and welcome once again to the Food Gallery. Tonight, let us stroll through the Hall of Home-Cooked Horrors. Liver and onions are on permanent display here, along with other supper-time nightmares of our youth, like beets. And of course, who could forget Mom's don't ask, don't tell casserole. These, of course, pale in comparison to the horrors of cube steak. In any sane universe, this prodigiously perforated montage of mismatched meats would be used to patch tires rather than fill stomachs. Most moms make matters worse by encasing each slab in a thick morass of flavorless fried flour, which they then top with gravy. But like many a monster from childhood mythology, the only thing cube steak needs is a little love, a little consideration, a little homespun know-how. Because when it's treated right, even the cheapest cutlet in town can cast a tall culinary shadow. Whether it's slow-cooked or chicken fried, cube steak can and will be. Cube steak. It's a bit of a misnomer, if you ask me. I don't think there's anything cubist about it. But hey, I guess it sounds a lot better than perforated meat, which is what cube steak really is. Now, why would you perforate a perfectly good piece of meat? Well, to convert a flavorful but tough hunk of meat into something that is flavorful and tender. Now, where might you find such a bit of goodness? Well, of all the primal cuts, I would say that the round is the best candidate. Of course, it's divided into the top round, the bottom round, and the knuckle. And of all of these, the bottom round is ideal for cube steak. It's lean, fairly tough, because it does a lot of exercising, but it's also got a great deal of flavor in it, and it can be had for a very, very reasonable price. Now, when shopping for a cube steak, you're probably going to run across two different types, cube steak and special cube steak. What's the difference? According to the North American Meat Processors Association, item number 1100, aka cube steak, can be prepared from any portion of the carcass excluding the shank and heel meat. However, item number 1101, aka beef cube steak special, is to be prepared exclusively from the round, loin, rib, or chuck sections. Additionally, the knitting together of two or more pieces of meat or the folding of the meat during the cubing process is permissible only in the cut sold as cube steak, not as cube steak special. That's right, he said knitting. But in this case, he's not talking about making a sweater. He's talking about the process of melding multiple pieces of meat into one single Frankensteak. Now, these look pretty good, but in some cases, you may not be able to tell which body parts went into your cube steak. And for me, well, that's reason enough to just avoid them altogether. Besides, a 2-pound bottom round roast, when perforated personally in the privacy of your kitchen, will taste better, and it will probably be a good bit cheaper. Now, you can cut this yourself, but if your butcher is ready and willing, and most are, just ask them to slice it down into 1/2 inch pieces. It'll be perfect. Now, if we are going to cube our meat ourselves, we will need a device of lethal cunning, capable of going medieval on a piece of meat. To that end, I put a call in this morning to my dungeon keeper. Hello, anybody home? What are you doing? You're supposed to be building stuff.
Oh, Master, don't be jealous that I've been chatting online with babes all day.
You know, that's fine. I'll get what I need from W.
Oh, no, Master mustn't. Mean and cruel she is. She hates us. Look what I've made for you, Master. With my own loving hands.
Ooh.
Look, Master, look.
86 tenderizing blades, 1,118 cutting edges, slices and knits meats simultaneously from both edges.
Ah.
And if you happen to have any bad bunnies around...
That's fine. I get the point.
Not if you use the handguard. Safety first, Master.
This is very snazzy. Made it yourself, did you?
Oh, yes. I had a lot more time on my hands since you made me cut back on the torturing and all.
Yeah, I can't help but notice it says here, made in Switzerland.
Why do you hate me so, Master?
You bought this on the internet, didn't you?
Oh, a couple of parts, perhaps.
How'd you pay for it?
Oh, this little plastic thing with the numbers on it.
It's my credit card.
Oh.
How much?
Oh, not much. $15. $100. Oh, please have mercy on us. We only wish us to please and maybe cube a guppy or two?
No, no, no. It goes back now. I'll find another way of doing this. And you, sir, you've been a very bad dungeon master.
Yes.
And as punishment, I want you to go skim the moat.
Lucky straw.
If, like me, you are not willing to part company with $1,500 just to cube some steaks, there are some alternatives. For instance, hunters really like this little hand crank model that supposedly cubes meat, but I think it really just kind of cuts it into pieces. No, no good. Oh, you can go with a more classic tool. For instance, every American home has one of these. It's called a meat tenderizer. It isn't. It should be called a musher because that's all it does is mush things into, blech. There is another little device, though, that not too many people know about. I like to think of it as my own little personal secret. Check this out. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. It's called a needler. Check this out. For the sake of illustration, let us pretend that this slab of gelatin is a steak to be cubed. Observe. Now remember, the goal is to break down as many fibers of connective tissue as possible. So I like to make 4 or 5 passes across the meat in one direction and then turn the device 90 degrees and make 4 more passes. And flip and repeat on the other side. Check it out. See all those little perforations? Oh, let me help. There, now you see them? Imagine if each one of those was cutting a piece of connective tissue. Imagine the tenderizing power that would have. Of course, before we actually puncture a perfectly good piece of meat, we should consider some cooking options. If you want to research cube steak, then you really ought to get yourself down to your local roadside diner. Thank you, because there's no better place. Of course, if you could pick the diner up and move it around the country, you would probably find that cube steak-related terms and definitions change with the topography. For instance, in North Carolina, I know for a fact that ordering country fried steak gets you a cube steak, which has been dredged in flour, browned, and then braised in a brown sauce. Now, up in Maryland, this might be served to you as a Salisbury steak, which is odd because I'm pretty sure that Dr. Salisbury himself, designed his dish around ground meat. Stranger still, in parts of Minnesota, this dish might be served to you as Swiss steak, even though it doesn't have any onions or tomatoes on it. In the great state of Texas, order a country fried steak, and you'll probably get a battered cube steak, pan-fried, and served with a peppered cream gravy. In other words, no matter where you roam, cube steak confusion is sure to follow. Well, in the name of culinary clarity, I'm going to stick out my neck and declare that a cube steak, lightly dredged in flour, lightly pan-fried, and then braised in a brown sauce is indeed country-style steak. It's a beautiful tune, and here's how it goes. Here we have our 2 pounds of beef bottom round trimmed of excess fat. We will liberally season on both sides, salt and pepper. And then, before we perforate, we will dredge lightly in all-purpose flour. Why? Because the flour will help the meat hold on to moisture as we poke holes in it. Plus, it'll help the flour to stick, and that will make a better outer coating. So, punch in both directions, both sides of the meat. It'll take a few minutes, but it's fun. And then we return to the dredging pan for another coating of flour. Make sure you dust off all of the extra, and then lay that out on a wire rack over a sheet pan. Begin by placing a 4 to 5 quart Dutch oven over medium-high heat. Cast iron is always a good idea. Then add just enough vegetable oil, canola oil, or what have you to, oh, what the heck, cover just the bottom of the pot. Then watch it closely, because as soon as it starts to shimmer like that, it's time to add the meat. And the goal here is to get this done without overcrowding it. So kind of be careful how you arrange it. There. As long as there's some space between the meat and the edge of the pan and each piece of meat, you will have thorough browning instead of stewing. It's going to take about 2 minutes per side. When they are nicely browned on both sides, move them to a plate, or in this case, the pot lid, and cover with a nice big piece of foil until you are done with the rest of the meat. When those last pieces are ready to exit the pan, you want to get them out pretty quickly, because you don't want the little brown bits on the bottom of the pan to burn. I know you can't see them, but they're there. So get 2 cups of chicken broth, canned or homemade, into the pan to deglaze. And flavor that up with 1 teaspoon of dried thyme. Whisk not only to combine, but also to help get those bits off of the bottom. As soon as the liquid comes to a boil, it's time for everybody to get back in the pool. Now, I know this liquid isn't much of a sauce now, but it will be. It will be. And remember, when positioning the meat, even distribution means even cooking. There we go. Now, lid up. This now goes into the middle of a 300-degree oven for 1.5 to 2 hours, or until the meat is the consistency of butter. This is what we call DMT, deep mahogany and tender. So tender, you don't even need a knife to cut it. You know, the long, slow, covered moist cooking method, or braising that we used, not only converted the humble liquids that we added into a delicious sauce, it finished what the needles began. That is, the complete decimation of connective tissue. Now, this is a cooking method that lends itself well to a wide variety of dishes, all based on the same cheap cut of meat. One that comes to mind right off the top of my head is Swiss steak, which is not really what it seems like. Never mind. Although conventions of culinary nomenclature would suggest that Swiss steak would originate in a place called Switzerland, the term actually comes from an old British word, swissing, which is a process of running a piece of fabric through a set of rollers in order to soften it. Now, the beginning of the procedure is precisely like the browning phase of our country-style steak, which is where we will pick up the action. Remove the meat and tuck it under our tent just as before. Then we'll introduce some aromatics to the party. 1 large onion sliced thin, 2 stalks of celery chopped fine, and 2 cloves of garlic minced. And just saute that again over medium-high heat for about 2 minutes, or until the onions turn golden, brown, and delicious. We will require the services of 1 tablespoon of tomato paste, 1 14.5-ounce can of diced tomatoes, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, and 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this fine spice, smoked paprika hails from the La Vera region of Spain, and it's available in sweet, bittersweet, and hot varieties. And you can get them from online spice merchants and some well-stocked megamarts. Now, if you can't get hold of the smoked stuff, you can use just regular old paprika. But the final dish will be missing a certain smoky goodness. Oh, and you're going to need 1.5 cups of beef broth. Bring that brew up to a boil, and then add the steaks back to the pot, being careful to thoroughly submerge them. Be certain that you literally wiggle the steaks down into the vegetation, because if they float up to the surface during their time in the oven, then they'll only get half the flavor that they so richly deserve. Now park this in the middle of your oven, 325 degrees, 1.5 to 2 hours, or until the meat is, that's right, like butter. Ah, what a delectable device, smothered in onions and infused with a smoky goodness that can only be called good eats.
Hey, mister, you can't bring your own food in here. You gotta order something.
You know, I used to have to say nutritional anthropologist to summon you up. Now you just pop in and out whenever you want. What's up with that?
Well, I just happen to be here doing undercover social research on middle-aged suburbanite males and social bonding through caffeine consumption.
Fascinating.
So what are you gonna have?
Well, I think I'll have a CFS. That's chicken fried steak, the unofficial state dish of Texas, which just happens to be based on
Wiener Schnitzel.
That is correct. But what I want to know is how a nice little German cutlet became the cornerstone of Lone Star cuisine.
Cultural adaptation. You see, during the 19th century, thousands of Germans actually emigrated into the hill country of central Texas.
Which explains why I like Texan beer so much, I guess.
When they got there, they found there was lots of beef, but no market for veal. And so they just adapted their Wiener Schnitzel recipe by tenderizing tougher cuts of meat. Even that white gravy that they put on chicken fried steak, that has roots in German cuisine from ramen schnitzel, which is a fried cutlet with cream sauce. But over time, chuck wagon cooks started making it, and that resulted in the myriad varieties we have today. Even our genius chef here in the diner is experimenting with using creme fraiche and chanterelles.
Ugh. Well, you know, in that case, Deb, maybe I'll just take matters into my own hands. See ya.
Oh, keep your pants on, Hal!
So here we go again with another 2 pounds of beef bottom round, trimmed of excess fat and cut into half-inch steaks. After the initial seasoning and dredging and, of course, needling, we'll go back into flour, knock off the excess, then into 3 whole eggs, lightly beaten. Be sure to handle the meat by the corners so you don't get club hand. After the egg, we'll go with another layer of flour. That's going to help to create a nice, thick, chicken-fried steak exterior. After the steaks are done, move them to a wire rack and allow them to sit for at least 10 or 15 minutes before cooking. Place a 10 to 12-inch sloped-sided fry pan over medium-high heat and apply just enough oil or bacon drippings to barely cover the pan in a thin film. Now, you'll notice that we have switched over from the Dutch oven, and that's because, well, one, we're not making a stew this time, so we might as well have a little more real estate to work in. But the main reason is that we will be building a gravy, and this type of pan is far more whisk-friendly. Let's introduce the meat to the heat. Again, we do not want to crowd the pan, but we don't want to waste time or energy either. Always place the rounded part of the meat towards the rounded part of the pan. If I do this right, I should be able to get 3 pieces in here. I've got a small one. There we go. Now, these are going to cook for about 4 minutes per side. In the meantime, you want to make sure that you have a waiting place for these to sit. I've got a wire cooling rack over a half sheet pan. As each batch of your steaks finish up, you want to stash them just on a wire rack set on a sheet pan in a 250-degree oven to keep them nice and cozy. Now, we build the gravy. For that, we will require some starch, and we just happen to have some here. Also need a whisk, which I've also got. So this pan will go back over, let's say, medium heat, and we'll add a little bit more vegetable oil. Not enough to coat, just maybe a tablespoon will do. And I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of flour left over from the dredging process. Just kind of sprinkle it around the pan. 1, 2, 3. If it's not exact, that's okay. And whisk. Why the whisking? Because we want every single little grain of flour to be covered with fat so that there won't be any clumping when the liquid enters the pan. Speaking of, we have 2 cups of chicken broth. And just whisk until this comes just to a boil, and it will thicken up very nicely indeed. Why? Well, because that's what starch does. I mean, we suspended all of those little flour granules in fat, right? So that they're evenly distributed now through the broth. And as the broth gets hotter, these little guys will all of a sudden open up, delivering their starchy payload all through the liquid. And of course, what does that do? Well, all of these little tangles form a mesh, the trap liquid. Thus, we have gravy. Sorry. Chicken fried steak won't be chicken fried steak if it doesn't have a white gravy on it. White gravy means dairy. The question is which one? We have some heavy cream here. Nice, but not for this kind of gravy because it'll separate and become greasy before it even gets to the table. Half and half doesn't have as much fat, but it's still a little too much. It'll overwhelm the subtle peppery flavor that we're going to have. Skim milk too far in the other direction. It's basically just, you know, white water. So the ideal suggestion, 1/2 cup of good old-fashioned whole milk. You just can't beat it for sawmill gravy. As soon as the stock begins to thicken up, the broth rather, and it has, we'll add 1/2 cup of that milk and continue to whisk while adding in about a teaspoon, or we'll say 1/2 teaspoon of fresh thyme. and continue over medium heat until this coats the back of a spoon. There. We'll check, and it coats the back of a spoon very, very nicely. How's it taste? Could use a little salt and a whole lot more pepper. We'll say a good heavy pinch of kosher, and we'll say about 5 good grinds. What the heck, we'll make it 10 good grinds of pepper. That should do the trick. Now that, my friends, is cubed steak taken to its highest possible elevation. Chewy on the inside, a little crusty on the outside, all smothered in a peppery, creamy gravy. Yep, there's only one thing missing from this picture. Correction, life's complete. Well, it appears that cube steak doesn't deserve to be in this exhibit after all. Cubing, like atom smashing, is a mighty force, but with a little know-how in your noggin, you too can use your power for good. Eats, that is.